Morning, everyone. I'm very, very glad to welcome all of you. And thank you for coming. The timing is challenging at the end of the semester with so much going on, especially with those who have a full-time teaching possibility or administrative duty. I'm also grateful for our guests who came all the way from Austria, Oliver Schreiber from the Bundesdenkmalamt, and we are still not quite clear about how to translate that into English from your National Monuments Commission to authority. I a number of kind of translations, and we have Kavita Singh also as a guest. I'm really, really happy that you came. I know your work, and I've watched videos from you giving wonderful talks at the Getty and so on, so I'm really pleased that you are here and be one of the leading scholars in the world of Mughal art. And also very happy that the head of the commission from Austria took time out from his very, very busy schedule, and this is really, really nice. This is the first time that the Center for Historic Houses is organizing a workshop. I called it a workshop, not a conference, because I wanted to use this kind of loose name, kind of less professional name, a hands-on kind of name, to indicate that this is something that should lead to something else in the future where we can maybe think, reflect, some future collaboration. I'm very, very happy to collaborate. I think in the world of heritage, this is the need of the hour. It is what we need to do. Heritage is very interdisciplinary. In the past 10 years or so, very interesting new fields have emerged, and courses have been offered at universities worldwide, which indicate this interdisciplinarity from chemistry, management of historic sites, history, architecture, and art history, just to name a few. I think we need more courses like this also in India to be able to address all of these pressing needs that historic houses have. The Center for Historic Houses is a newly found initiative by me, and I was actually really surprised that something like this didn't exist in India, because normally each country has such an initiative which works as an intermediary between the owners of historic houses, heritage experts, and the public. So this is the first initiative, and of course it is a daunting task, and I'm a newcomer here. Many of you have done wonderful things, like the preservation of the Jal Mahal in Jaipur, Vibhuti, and so on. I mean, you've all done wonderful work, and you know how challenging it can be to work in India at times. Just one example, for the past year, 1 year, I've been trying to get Bikaner House for this kind of event. For the first event for the Center for Historic Houses, and I have not succeeded because sometimes dealing with the government is just very challenging indeed. You don't get a response, you meet, there's no follow-up, you all know what I'm talking about. And you see, we have no one from the ASI, which I think is a real pity. We have representatives from the World Monuments Fund, from ICOMOS, from INTBAU, but not from the ASI. Instead, we have the equivalent all the way from Austria, but not from India. So this kind of thing is really a pity. And I really think that in the future, we can manage to bring more people to the table, because there are wonderful initiatives, but it's kind of people working in their own area. There's not enough collaboration. I think that's what we really need. So this is one thing. And what is the Center for Historic Houses about? We have 4 main aims. One is the research and analysis and documentation of historic houses. That's what kind of architectural historians and art historians do. But the other one, the very important role that we see, is the kind of entrepreneurial vision to find management schemes for historic houses. And I just give you one example. Amita Baig, who's the India representative of the World Monuments Fund, gave a wonderful talk at Jindal the other day, and she said, and they have a lot of money actually, and they did wonderful projects such as the Hyderabad residency, for instance. If you have the chance to look at it, it's really a fantastic project. But once they're finished, what will happen next? Who will take care of these carefully restored buildings, and how will they be developed? How can these historic houses from the past be meaningful today? And I think this is where the center hopes to make an important contribution. This is why we are working with the different schools from Jindal University, particularly the business school, the law school, the liberal arts school, the journalism school, and the School for Art and Architecture to develop management schemes. In this context, I work very closely with my alma mater, the University of Oxford. They were the first institution to work in this kind of area, to do what is called or referred to as knowledge transfer between members of the university and owners of historic houses. And it's under Oliver Cox, who is an extremely innovative person, very active, working very closely with the National Trust in the UK. And the National Trust is also planning some India focus, looking at their houses with a history that connects them to India. So they are particularly interested in innovative schemes to raise money for historic houses. And that's what we are trying through various schemes. And heritage interpretation is one of them, but also planning cultural events that are meaningful, which is also educational, but also concerts, exhibitions, and to create a platform for these historic houses. Only about 3,000 historic houses are protected in India. In such a vast country as in India, this is a number that is far too low. INTAC has been working on a list of historic buildings. And the moment that list comes out, people come and destroy these buildings. So there are many, many challenges in India. The Enemy Property Act, some of you might be familiar with this, is another very, very kind of sad kind of, I think, affair where Indian citizens of Muslim origin are declared as enemies, which I think is something that is not right. And these properties are crumbling. The most important one, or famous one, notorious one, is Mahmudabad estate. Maybe some of you have heard about this, where the family has lost it just because one member went to Pakistan, and the rest of the family, they've always stayed in India, and they've lost their claim to this property. And the property is in a horrible condition, crumbling, and members of the family have been fighting for decades, really, to for their own kind of home property. So this said, I would like to welcome Oliver Schreiber, whom I've known for many years, and he has an incredible wealth of knowledge of historic buildings, working for the Bundesdenkmalamt in Austria, really from medieval structures to Baroque palaces, to 19th century buildings, to early 20th century modernist buildings. It's really fantastic. And Oliver is someone who, enters a room, he can tell a whole story just by looking at it, that a dog lived there, because he finds some scratch marks or something. I've never really seen anyone like this. He has a photographic memory. It is a real pleasure that you have come all this way from Austria. And he goes beyond his duty at work. I mean, he's done so much to not only preserve these historic buildings, but to breathe new life into these buildings. One example that I would like to mention is the sound studio, the film studios, for instance, that were empty, and he actually revived them, and it has been such a success. Maybe we have a few minutes that you talk about this project. He also got the most distinguished award for heritage in Europe, which is the Europa Nostra Award, for turning Gustav Klimt's last studio into a historic house museum. And Klimt is really the most famous, probably, painter of Austria. Maybe some of you have seen this fantastic movie, Woman in Gold. If you haven't, I can highly recommend it, which is, all of these projects have been achieved just by bringing people together, being active, without any money. Really, no one was interested in this house. No one was ready to give any money. And look at it now. It's really amazing. So he's here to talk about Castelhof and the fountains and the water structures there. And I should mention that, I mentioned this in the description of the workshop, that this is very much a workshop dedicated to building bridges between the East and the West. And I'm still not happy about this dichotomy. It's kind of artificial, but between many different countries, and also between different disciplines from the field of water science. We have a wonderful representative here, Sadev Singh, and our other guests is just landing in a few minutes, and heritage. So I'll welcome you. Thank you very much. And Oliver will be giving the keynote lecture.
Let's start. Yeah, today it's a great pleasure and honor to have the keynote today and the opportunity to give the keynote at this event. It's a pleasure because it allows me to present one of the most beautiful conservation projects of the recent years. And it's a great honor because I'm standing here before you as a representative of one of the oldest authorities, the Federal Monuments Authority of Austria. And it's the oldest institution in the field of architectural conservation. We were founded in 1850 based on the heritage theories of heritage protection of Alois Riegel and Max Dvorak, yield to the first law concerning the transfer abroad of movable monuments in 1918, and the first federal law concerning the protection of monuments regarding their historic, artistic, and cultural significance. And it was in the year 1923. So let's see. Skip. So, okay. A little bit slow, but I would like to show you a little bit about the topography of Castlehof. But let's see. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, but it's not. No. Unfortunately, I haven't used my laptop, but it will work out. Yes,
Da.
Yes. Ja, but ich wollte eigentlich ganz Europa. Schlosshof, Austria. Yes, here we go. Okay, pass. Okay, here we go. Yes. Okay. So, topography. There's probably hardly any area in Central Europe which can be so clearly defined through rivers and mountains as this part of Austria between Vienna and Bratislava, the capital of Slovakia. This 60-kilometer wide strip has been a connection between north and south and east and west for thousands of years. In the west, the Alps are consisting a natural border that is about 1,200 kilometers long and 250 kilometers wide. Slightly more towards the east, there are the Carpathian Mountains, a 1,500 kilometers long mountain range, which divides Eastern Europe from Western Europe. In this area, the most important trade routes between Central Europe and the Baltic Sea up to the Bay of Rome existed here for 2,000 years. Better known as the Bernsteinstraße, the European Amber Road. And so because this doesn't work, I will start with my PowerPoint project. So, okay. Perfect. In addition, this area is divided by the river Danube, and at the length of 2,800 kilometers, the river Danube both connects and separates diverse cultural spaces, and currently 10 countries, and the most countries on a single river worldwide. For thousands of years, this stretch of land formed a natural transition between Occident and Orient, and hence was of considerable strategic importance. Thus, it doesn't come to us as a surprise to find a palace which incorporate a number of aspects. What I mentioned, the historic and politic aspect, architecture, cultural, art, nature, and of course, water. The palace and garden complex I'm referring to is Schlosshof, the Castlehof. You see it here. It's the view from the capital of Slovakia today to the west in the direction of Vienna, the capital of Austria. What you can see on the right side is the river March, and it was a natural border between Austria and Hungary for hundreds of years. And to the left, there will be the Danube River, the longest trading route also through Europe. This Castlehof was sometimes referred as the Hungarian Sanssouci or the Austrian Versailles. The castle offers a vista towards the east, the lower Carpathian Mountains, Hungary in the past and Slovakia today, and is directed exactly towards Constantinople, the current Istanbul. To the north is a huge field, the Machfeld, and towards the south are the Danube forests. The horizon towards the west is framed by the imperial capital of Vienna, so it was an ideal genius loci. Politics. To understand the Castlehof, the complex, politics is one of the important starters. Castlehof was created as a country seat for Prince Eugen of Savoy. It was his last residence as Tusculum Rurale. Eugene France, Prince of Savoy-Carignan, was the most successful and important military general in the service of the Emperor, of the Holy Roman Emperor. At this time, the Ottoman Empire was at height of power seeking to gain supremacy over much of Europe. In the early 16th century, Turkish troops nearly succeed in gaining entrance to the so-called Door of Europe. As I mentioned, the Alps from the west and the Carpathian Mountains from the east, and this small 60-kilometer wide strip was the most important point in Central Europe for thousands of years, because this was the gate to Europe. So in this time, the Ottomans moved to west, and in 1529, the city of Vienna nearly collapsed. As you can see behind me, the city of Vienna under attack from the Osmanic troops. Because of the light, what you can see. So this is the center of Vienna, the castle. Thank you. The former castle. My office right now is right here. Thank you. The coup failed in 1592, yet in 1663, Turkish troops tried again to besiege Vienna. In order to rightly assess the importance of this military operation, a glance of the number of troops will suffice. The Turkish troops consisted of 150,000 men under arms, as opposed to the Viennese army, consisting of mere 16,000. In addition to another 80,000 men that the King of Poland has sent to their aid. To compare, Paris in this time had 600,000 inhabitants, also Beijing. Vienna had only 50,000, and from these 50,000, 60,000 under arms. On 12th of September 1683, Turkish troops were beaten in the Battle of Vienna. In the next year, the Holy League, a bond between the Holy Roman Empire together with Venice, Poland, Lithuania, and Moscow, conquered back the eastern territories of Europe. The Ottoman Empire declined, and with the peace treaty of Karlowitz in 1699, Austria had risen to an influential superpower. Behind me you see the general of the Turkish troops, and he was then, because the coup failed in 1683, he was executed then in Serbia this year. Here, the last battle of Vienna, 1683. And the armed conflicts of the eastern border of Europe didn't only last 450 years, from the beginning of the 15th century until the 19th century, but basically only ended a mere 30 years ago, in 1989, with the fall of the Iron Curtain. That was only 2 kilometers eastwards the Castle Hof. So maybe also an impression of the importance of this point, of this ground in Central Europe. Total work of art. In 1697, Prince Eugen had advanced the position of general of the imperial and allied troops. After he was deputy general and in the so-called Great Turkish War, and in the early 18th century he was appointed minister, general, and finally field marshal. The Prussian King Frederick the Great referred to him as the actual Emperor of Austria. And for his service, Emperor Charles VI gave him the land of the castle Obersiebenbrunn. It's maybe 20 kilometers east of Vienna. And at the end of 1725, the then 62 years old Prince again bought the neighboring land in Castle Hof. What you can see here, after he made a huge project over 5 to 6 years to rebuild the existing castle to his then Tusculum Rurale. In accordance with views towards aristocratic obligations of the time, Prince Eugen saw his duties as patron of the arts and architecture, or in short, as a builder and owner of palaces. Examples at the time were French castles such as Vaux-le-Vicomte and Versailles, designed by the successful and trio landscape architects Lenotre, painter Lebrun, and architect Levaux. This combination became the model for the designing and planning of castles in Europe. What you can see here, that's what I referred as total work of art. It was not only architecture, it was not only garden, it was also the art of water that make this object, this castle, outstanding. As you can see here, the castle to the west, on a hill with 7 terraces, the water coming out of the castle, and that's a very special type of typus, and then ending at this so-called octagon in the east. The project began, as I said, 1725 and leads to 1732. And it was planned by Lucas von Hildebrandt. It was one of the famous architects of his time, and also with specialists in art and water. The Fontenier, the specialist for water, was Dominique Girard, and he was a pupil of Lenotre. Lenotre was the main architect and water specialist in Versailles. So Prince Eugen, he had the most important team under his for his work, and they also made his castles Obersiebenbrunn, and then also the Vienna palace of Prince Eugen and the Winter Palace and also the Summer Palace, Belvedere. Yeah, from the interior, let's go back. The most important artists work on this castle. What you can see here is the main hall. And what's very interesting, that he used a lot of Indian culture in his castle. So for me, it's the point that Prince Eugen saw the East and the Ottomans, also the Ottoman Empire, not as more as competitors than as Gegner. Yeah, as enemy. He saw them not as enemy, but as competitors. So he used a lot of Indian textile in his sleeping room and in his staterooms. And that's one of the fascinating aspects on this eastern border of Europe. After the castle was, after his death, he died, Prince Eugen died in 1736, and the castle was then sold to the Emperor Maria Theresia and his and her man, Franz Stephan von Lothringen. Till the year 1898, it was used as summer residence, and then as army barrack, and that was the problem for the interior. From 1898, then during the war, you see here the German army used it for the cavalry. It then, after 1945, was also used as barracks for the Russian troops for 10 years, and then was in a really bad condition. So 1986, the first restoration work began. There was a big exhibition with the main theme, Prince Eugen. And the first, what you can see here, the facades were restored, reconstructed. And the second time we worked on it, the Federal Monument Authority, began in the year 2000. The first projects were made, and since 2002 to 2018, so 16 years, we worked now for the restoration reconstruction. And you can see here the end, but it's never the end, from 2018. So what was the philosophy? The philosophy for this project. As I referred, Prince Eugen had a lot of castles. As you can see here, it was the Castle Belvedere, his summer palace near Vienna. It's if you walk by foot, it's maybe 15 minutes from the center of Vienna, so it's right now in the middle. Castle Belvedere, with a lot of water fountains, very strict. Refers on French examples of this time. Then his palace in the city, the Winter Palace, nothing to do with water, but it was very interesting. The really outstanding interior design of this time, and he had in this time 70-20s. He had central heating. That was the most important thing. And then Schlosshof. One idea of Prince Eugen as general was that he not only wanted to create a summer residence, but it has also to be like a fortress. And he referred to in letters to France when he said that it's made also like a fortress to withstand an attack. Yes, you can see here with fortification walls and really massive doors in the middle. The second thing was that according to the the art of water. It was not so easy to get this much water there he needed. So they built 3 artificial lakes in the west of this complex, in a village called Koresnbrunn. There's 1 well and 3 artificial lakes. So he had a lot of water there, and with pipes of 2 kilometers he brought it into the castle. So you see here, when you came from Vienna after 5 hours travel with horses, you were very thirsty and dusty. That's the first view you got from this complex. Was a huge fountain on the right side. With 3 large mascarons and a fountain. After that, on the 3rd terrace, another fountain was placed. It's called Najadenbrunnen. It's much more the lion, and that's from the 3rd to the 4th terrace. There's grotte, also with gods. There's the river Danube and the river Mar. And then the most important place. No? Is it okay? Okay. The most important, it doesn't hurt. The most important fountain I mentioned, you will see here. Yeah, it's a little bit like Versailles, but if you see the whole complex, and I called it the 3 natures. The 3 natures were, in a garden theory, you have 3 natures. The wild nature outside, the woods, then the nature that leads to agriculture, for example, and then the 3rd nature was so-called Gartenkunst, the art of gardening. So 3 natures of gardening, but with the water, it was like this, that the water came, the water that was used was for pleasure, here in the central view, then also for the horses and for the agriculture, and the 3rd nature was then the wild nature, like the Danube River and the Mark River. In winter times and after the winter, it was completely full with water, a lot of ice, so it was really the wild nature. And it was also used for transportation. When the Emperor Maria Theresia came from Vienna, she used boats down the river Danube. And what you see here was the small harbor of Kastelhof. Yeah. After the project was finished in 2018, the water is now really in function. There are parties again, and it's really in good use. It's used as a museum, but also as recreation area. You can have there 5 hours, really a good time, seeing the garden, the museum, the collections, and also have the possibilities for parties. So this project has to be continued. Thank you.